we're going to go on topic number 2, and this is more of a how people feel. The way I see it is like the world feels like it's on the brink of chaos, right? There's war going on in Ukraine and Russia, right? Ballistic missiles were used recently, which can literally set off a domino effect literally across the world, right? And it's huge because this is all happening once again before Trump goes into power. It's like these guys are trying to pull the switch before he gets elected. So that way it's too late. And it's very scary. Second one is the Israel and Middle East, right? The Middle East is quite literally on fire. Multiple wars on multiple fronts. Israel and the region. The third one is China and Taiwan. China is one of the people just chilling in the background, right? They're the second or third, you can argue that, highest power in the world. And they're the quietest. Why are they the quietest? Well, the West is depleting their army and force and sending funding and depleting their dollars by economic means. Canada has only a weak supply of its army defense, and I think that was an article put up. We don't have it. I don't have it. I
We'll
didn't
pull
pull
it
it up,
up.
but
We'll
I
pull it
remember
up.
reading. Yeah, I remember reading about the fact that Canada's army forces has 2 weeks supply or whatever. So China is just chilling back, looking at the West being taken out from within. And if a war happens with Russia, China's going to be the last one to join in while everybody's weak and take over that spot. That's the way I see it. And all these assassination attempts and all these multiple factors coming into play, it goes back to what that 4-star general of the Navy said not long ago. And this is a fact. 4-star general of the Navy. The only thing I might mistake is whether it was Navy or not, but I know it's a 4-star general. And he said that he's predicting a direct war with China. If that's the case, we are quite literally on the correct timeline that he was predicting. What do you guys think about that?
War with China? I don't know, man. I think all these places want to avoid wars. Because they realize the power that we have. Like they realize nuclear war would not be good for anybody. So I
And it's
think
not just China that I'm asking. Sorry, so let me ask you. It's not about just only China. It's just their whole feeling of where the world is from all the protests happening in the world, from all the like unsettlement from people, regular people amongst communities. And this is directly impacted because of these things happening around the world. The division between us, forgetting that we're all human and we're just pawns while these guys are just pulling strings.
yeah.
Mickey.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, you know, are they actually going to try to go to war? Like Joseph said, if that escalates to a point where, we're talking about nuclear weapons, which it could very easily, then it's really beneficial to nobody. So my intuition says that they're just using this as like fear-mongering tactics, to keep people worried, to keep people distracted. And it makes more sense to me that they're saying all this while behind the scenes just trying to do, their own globalist agenda. I feel we're more headed towards what the Economic Forum deems as what's going to happen to 2030, where, we're talking about smart cities, and that kind of relates to one of the topics we're going to talk about later, so that they can gain more control and so that they can pretty much tell us what to do. But how do they get there with us complying? I feel like by distracting us, by keeping us worried, you know. It still makes a good point, right? Like China is increasing in power. They came from, almost having no power. They came from famine to now being one of the superpowers of the world. So it is
Their
important to
growth is
talk
one of
about.
the fastest in history. Yeah, that's
Yeah, for
super
sure.
correct. Yeah.
For sure. And it's in their culture. It almost seems like it's in their culture to be disciplined, to be focused, almost the opposite of where our culture goes in Western society, where we're actually taught to be the opposite. We're taught to be distracted, to be like if anything, focus on entertainment. But we can't even focus on that. Like now they have TikTok videos where you need like a Minecraft fucking screen at the bottom, while they have someone talking at the top, just for you to not scroll to the next fucking video, right?
Yeah.
So without people's ability to focus and to really tune in on certain subjects or what's really important. They don't know what's important, and they just disregard it, stick to their entertainment while the powers in play do whatever they want, right?
Misinformed,
Yeah, and they keep them misinformed. That's yeah. It's all
right?
about that.
Bro, the other
Julian, you
thing.
want to touch it?
1 second. The
Yeah,
other
I was
thing.
gonna.
All right,
Sorry,
go
Joe.
on.
Go ahead.
No, you can go ahead. Go ahead.
No,
No, Joseph, finish off, then Julian go.
I was just gonna
So
say
Joseph go.
it's definitely like a perspective thing, right? Like if you ask the majority of people, what do you think on war? Most people are gonna say it's a negative thing, right? And that's because we are the ones that are directly affected by it. But if you ask a lot of these companies, a lot of these people in power, it's not a negative, it's a positive. It's a time to make money. That's all they see in their head. It's a time. It's a time to make money for resources, food, ammunitions, weapons, all this stuff. Donations from people like they did with the Ukraine war, where we donated billions and billions and billions. Not all that money went towards the war purpose. It went to the pockets of the politicians, and it's
Yeah, and
also an agenda for them to be able to do plans that they weren't able to do before, like like making destroying a whole city to make a blank page so then they can redevelop it the way they want it to redevelop, right?
Yeah.
A lot of these places that are being attacked are centers that they want to remake it, make the infrastructure different than it was before, remodel it in a way that they can control it even more. How do you do that with the buildings still up? How do you do that with people still living there? You can't. So what do? You start up a war. You bomb everything. You make it a clean slate so you can remodel it to the way you want it to be. So
And if it's not war, you make it seem like climate change. You know,
it's all the
or you start
war,
a fire.
climate change. You start a
that's
fire,
what I'm
burn the
saying.
city down entirely. Like there's a lot of ways you can do it.
Right, Julian, what were you gonna say?
well, I was just gonna say, talking about China and U.S. China's just waiting, right? It's all a power game. Installing different treaties with different countries or building stuff like, I,
Bricks.
bricks. But I was even more like something that just I recently learned about was that like the United States helped build the Panama Canal and finished its construction in 1914, right? Like why else would they help build the canal if they're not looking for something back? And I was reading that if there was ever war to go down there, they have the sole right through the treaty to install their military there if they want to, if it's going to shut down the canal, right? And the canal is like one of the a large port where they can get the goods in and out by boat, right? By freight.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's
Yeah.
both of them are playing. They're both rolling the dice, both playing. One's in Ukraine. Think about all the minerals and different resources that the country has that was formerly Russian territory, right? Like, everything's in motion, everything's going, and everybody's got a foot in the game.
I actually got
Fighting
a
with
clip about
Russia.
that with the Russia, and then one of the main politicians talking about what's going on like with the war in Ukraine, and he's talking about how he can't let Russia win and let China benefit off of the resources in Ukraine because it's one of the biggest lands of resources in Europe. It's crazy. By the way, Panama used to
Or
be
the
part of
US?
Colombia. China. Because China and
Panama, yes.
China and Russia belong. They have a treaty like right now. Like they got the BRICS. They got a lot of alliances. So if Russia
Yeah, then that all
benefits,
came out of these powers, and
yeah,
all this has happened over the powers of one. It started with the U.S. electing Biden, and it all went across the East. I mean, no, the East, across the world, where it's like so many countries in the West elected left-leaning governments, and now the pendulum is switching. Everybody's is starting to vote for a conservative, like a right-leaning government, like conservatives, like in Germany, where they have there's a bunch of protests calling it far right government, just because they want immigration to stop. Like it's crazy how they manipulate words to fit their agenda and to cause chaos and to cause protests and to cause unsettlement and fear and so on. Anyways,
yeah.
these are all go under why it may feel like the world is literally tearing apart, but this is a message to everybody, including ourselves. focus on yourself. Focus on building yourself. Focus on building your family. Focus on building your community, informing people so people make decent, smart decisions based on truth and logic rather than emotion. Because emotion will lead you astray, but facts are facts.